That's it. The dream is over. I had this idea in my mind for a long time of creating a video, this video, which I was going to call The Year I Became an Ultra Runner. That was the goal. The idea was that when I was making this video, I'd have some GoPro footage of me running my 100-mile race to victory, and I would show you that in this video, but that's not what happened. I never finished my 100-mile race. I never got there. If you guys are joining me for the first time, though, I'm John from BulldogMindset.com. On this channel, I teach you how to be a man. I teach you how to build financial independence, how to get the physique you want, how to get the girls you want, how to go from the victim mindset to the bulldog mindset. If that sounds like something that you are interested in, click the subscribe button. Click the bell to get some notifications when the new videos come out. And make sure you take the Bulldog quiz. It's up here in the cards. If you haven't taken it already, just 10 questions. It'll tell you what your Bulldog score is. And guys, I would appreciate it. I've noticed in the YouTube algorithm now, the videos that get the likes, they tend to get a wider distribution. So as much as I hate to say, give this video a like, if you wouldn't mind giving it a like, I would definitely appreciate that. It'll just take you a second. It doesn't cost you anything. All right. So with that said, let's talk about this year. For those of you that don't know, I set out this year to become an ultra runner, to run 100 miles. Now, in the past, I've run a bunch of marathons. I've done some challenges. I did this dopey challenge where I did like a 5K, a 10K, a half, and a full back to back. All right. I've run a lot of half marathons. And, for me, like distance running has always been something that I did because it was so hard. That was really the reason why I did. I'm not built to be a distance runner, okay? I'm 235 pounds, all right? I don't even have the genetics for distance running. Even if I wasn't so large, I still don't have the slow twitch muscle fibers, right? I'm just not really built for it, but I was able to be successful at it. I was able to do what I never thought was possible. I never thought that I'd ever be able to run a half marathon. I never thought I'd ever in my life be able to run a full marathon, and I did that. And actually this year I ran a 50-mile race and almost made it to my 100 miles. So anyway, long story short, at the beginning of this year, I was going to decide between either giving up running completely or going to run 100 miles. That's kind of how I operate. If you've noticed on this channel, I tend to be an extremist. I tend to go all in on things. One of the books that I really admire is Grant Cardone's book called Be Obsessed or Be Average. I'll put a link up here and you can check out that book. But that's how I operate. And so, I've hated running. Okay. I never really loved running. As I started to get into further distances, I would say that I loved having run. There were some runs that I loved, but for the most part, I've really hated running. I didn't want to do it, but I believe firmly that you should do things that you hate in life. I think it is a way to develop your character. It is a way to figure out who you are. It is a way to dismantle who you are and to become and reshape and remold who you are, to become that. And the only way to reach that level of vulnerability, of the ability to melt yourself down and mold yourself into a different shape is through pain. You must go through pain, and it must be self-imposed pain. You must bring this pain upon yourself. And it's a lot harder for me. I have to tell you guys that, for someone to run even just a marathon at my size, I'm burning about twice as many calories as a normal person. I don't have twice as much glycogen storage, right? It requires way more effort, way more work. My heart and my lungs have to work harder. They're not proportionally bigger to my size. Just because I weigh 235 pounds doesn't mean that my heart and lungs have a higher capacity or a bigger size than someone who's 130 or 140 pounds. I'm saying this not to make an excuse, but just so you guys are aware that when I'm training to run a marathon or an ultra marathon, it's a pretty big deal. It's a pretty big undertaking. It's not just what maybe the average person would experience in doing that. Again, not making excuses in any way. I'm just letting you guys know because most people don't really understand this, right? Anyway, to get on with the story, and this is going to be somewhat of a long one, I decided that I was going to go ahead and do this. And so I hired a coach, really good guy, really awesome coach, Eric Sensman. I talked to him and he convinced me that, yes, I could do this. I was a little surprised. I thought maybe he was going to be like, no, you can't do this. And I told him, I'm eating one meal a day. He said, okay, well, you can do that. You can still do that. And he made a training plan for me. And the plan was that I'd basically train for a year and then at the end of the year, I'd be able to run this 100 miles. And along the way, I'd run a marathon. He trained me to run a marathon. And then I'd run a 50-mile race, and then I'd run this 100. And so, I fully committed to this. I trained, and my this last year has been absolute hell. I have run upwards of 85-mile weeks at the most, run some 30-mile runs, a lot of 20-mile runs, a lot of runs in between, just really, some weeks running 15 hours in a week, and then spending a lot of the time recovering. So it's been hell. It's been a lot of training. It's been really, really difficult to do this, to get to that point. Some days running a back-to-back run where I'd run 30 miles in one day and 15 miles the next day. And so, I trained for all this, and what ended up happening, of course, with everything going on this year, is that the first marathon that I had trained for, it got canceled. So I decided I was just going to run it by myself. So I just ran it around the bay. I did okay time, not my PR, but under 4 hours, which was good. I was happy with. That was what my goal was. And then, and I didn't really taper for it because it was part of the training plan. And then I set my sights on the 50 mile. So I signed up for this 50-mile race that Eric and myself picked out. And it was supposed to be from Idaho to Montana. But of course, that ended up getting canceled. And so, again, I was stuck in the position of, it's not really easy to run a 50-mile race by yourself. You kind of want to have that support. You kind of want to have, at that level. But I said, you know what? I've trained for this. I'm going to do this. So I end up running 50 miles, and I ran it just around the bay here in San Diego, 3 laps around the bay. There were about 16-mile laps, and finished up the last few miles, and I did it. I got it done. I averaged about 10-minute miles, which I felt was pretty good. My goal was to hit about an 8-hour time. I ended up being about 8.5, which, given the conditions, I was pretty happy with. So then the next goal was to train for this 100-mile. And so I found a race that wasn't canceled, that was going from Flagstaff, Arizona to the Grand Canyon. And I was going to try and do flat races, but for the 100-mile, I thought, okay, well, let me do something a little bit more scenic. It'll be fun. And so I trained for the first time on trails. And so this was, definitely a unique experience for me. And I got to tell you, it was tough. It was certainly tough, and I got injured multiple times. Training on trails is way, way different than training on the road. And, I rolled my ankles. I had one run that was just miserable. I think it was a 3.5-hour run on the trails with like 2,000 or 3,000 feet of elevation climb. And I was ill prepared. I came out there with not enough water. I came out there too late in the day. It was hot. It was close to like 90 degrees. And within the first 10 minutes of the run, I thought I broke my right foot. I came down on a rock really hard. My foot was messed up. I was limping, but I decided to go on. So I limp ran my way, and I ended up getting to a very deserted area of the trail, and it was about 90 degrees out. I was running out of water, and there were just massive hills. And I thought, oh crap, I may die out here. Like this is bad, with my limp foot. And so I kept on going because the only thing to do was to go forward or call 911, I suppose. But I ended up rolling my ankle on the other foot while climbing up one of the steep grades. And so I could hardly walk on either feet, but I continued to run, finished up the run. It was still another about 45 minutes of running. And I was messed up. And I thought that was over. I thought that was it. I thought I was done, because when I got home, I could not walk. I couldn't walk on either foot. I had to crawl around, literally. And then, I eventually went to the doctor the next day, and they did x-rays, and nothing was broken. So I still couldn't walk that day. But then the day after, miraculously, I was able to limp. So I limp ran my way on I think it was a 10-mile run, and continued my training. And then over the next couple of days or so, my feet got better, and I was okay. But eventually I ended up going to Flagstaff, because the race that I was training for, the 100-mile race, it was at elevation. So it's at 7,000 feet elevation. So when you're running an elevated race at that elevation, you have to acclimate to that elevation. Otherwise, it's going to be really hard. You can do it, but it's going to be really hard because you don't have enough red blood cells, because the air is thinner, so you're going to get less oxygen. So the body adapts by creating more red blood cells, and the only way to do that is either by having like a pressurized tent that you sleep in, which has questionable results, or you just go to altitude. So I lived in Flagstaff for the last month of my training for this race and trained there and trained on the trails there. And, it lived in an Airbnb there. That's how much, I was sacrificing to do this goal. And about, I think my third week there, or second and a half week, I got the notification that the race was canceled. So I decided to go ahead and stay the rest of the time in Flagstaff and continue my training. And then when I got home, my plan was to run 100 miles. So that's what I did. I finished my training and I got back home. And the day I got back home, I was expecting to get a boost from the altitude, going to low altitude, but instead I got sick. I did not feel good. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was some overtraining. Maybe it was actually getting sick. I feel like it probably had something to do with the altitude too. And I wasn't able to train as hard, of course, at altitude because it was harder. So maybe I just wasn't prepared. But I went out and ran a 3-mile run, and it was slow. I felt like things were not going well, and I kind of knew the next day was going to be trouble. So the next day, I started my 100-mile run at, I believe it was around, I think it was 7 or 8 at night. The plan was just to run all the way. The plan was it was going to take about 20 hours to complete. And I got about 32 miles in, and then I just had to call it because it was not going well. I had extremely high heart rate. I was running really slow, just felt horrible. And I knew that there was no way this was going to happen, for whatever reason. So after that happened, I pretty much was done. I pretty much quit. I called up my coach and I was like, look, I gave it my best shot. I trained for this for all this time. I never missed a training, never missed a run, aside from when I was injured and couldn't run. I missed one run, I think, one Sunday run. That was it. And, I've done everything I can. I ran the 50 miles. I did everything I can. And the race is canceled. And then I tried to run it when I got home. But, in order for me to be able to do this again, to run this 100 miles, I'll have to start training again in probably another 6 or 7 weeks of training to get back to where I need to be in order to do this. And I don't want to do that. It's taken over so much of my life. And it really had, up to this point, like, it's hard for me to describe what it's like for you guys, for me running, 70, 80-mile weeks plus lifting and running the business. And you're just tired, right? Your body is just completely tired. I would sit at my desk sometimes when I'm supposed to be working, and I'm really productive normally, but I was so drained that I couldn't even think. I couldn't even sit and type. I couldn't even record a YouTube video. And so for this last year, my work has suffered immensely. I've gotten a lot done, of course, but I could have gotten probably 5 times as much done, maybe 10 times as much if I wasn't running. Not just because of the time, but just because of how tired I've been. And a lot of it too is because of how much I weigh, right? If you can imagine how many, a lot of days I was burning 6,000 to 7,000 calories. Okay, if you can imagine, that's a lot of calories, right? So anyway, I decided I was going to call it off. And a couple days later, I said, okay, I felt like going for a run. So I went for a run one night and I just ran as fast as I could. And I ran about 8 miles and I was running, close to 8-minute mile pace. And I was like, all right, I'm back and I feel like doing this. Like I don't want to give up on this. And so, I called up my coach and I was like, hey, Eric, I'm going to do this. Let's figure out the plan. Let's see what this would look like. So we signed up for a race that was supposed to happen on December 5th and 6th and in Texas that hopefully wasn't going to get canceled. Everything looked good. And then I told him, I said, kick my ass. Give me the hardest training that you can. If I have to run 200 miles a week, I'll run 200 miles a week. Whatever is required in order for me to be ready for this, because I want to get this done and I want to get this checked off my list. And I knew when I was signing up for this was already, I'd gone through so much, but I was like, okay, I can handle just, 6 or 7 more weeks of hell. I'll just do it. I'll just suck it up and do this for 6 or 7 more weeks. And so we came up with a plan. He came up with the training for me. And, things actually went fairly well. I was feeling good. I was getting faster times and everything was going good. My training started ramping up. I started getting up to 80-mile weeks. And then about a couple of weeks ago, I got sick. I got bad sick. And it was horrible. I had about 104 fever for 3 days. And I finally got over it. I ended up missing, though, 2 critical runs, right? I had this big run coming up, a 25-mile run on a Saturday, and then a 20-mile run the next day, these back-to-back long runs, and I missed both of those. So I thought, okay, I'm done. Like there's nothing I can do here. So eventually, I ended up calling Eric again, and he said, well, there's a couple options we could do. We could extend things. We could, move things around, right? We could change things up. So finally, what I decided was, let's just push things back 1 week. Let's repeat the week that I sort of missed the big runs on. And so we'll now make it December 12th and 13th that I'll run this race. Oh, one other piece here that I forgot, which is that the race got canceled again. So that race got canceled right before I got sick, and then I got sick. And so on top of that, but I still said, I'm doing this, right? I'm going to run this myself, if I have to. And, so anyway, we ended up moving the race or the virtual race that I was going to run back to December 12th and 13th. And that Monday, after being sick, I had that day off, and then Tuesday I started my training again. So I only missed 2 days of running, just that 25-mile and that 20-mile run. And then as I was running, I was feeling okay, but not great. And I was still a little bit sick, but I figured, okay, I'll just run through it and I'll be fine. But I kept on feeling like my energy was getting less and less, and that I was breaking down but not recovering. But I figured, okay, you get sick, eventually I'll get out of the hole. So the weekend was hard. It was hard to run those hard runs, but I got through it, and I thought, okay, well, now I have a day off on Monday, and then the next week should be great because I should be well again. And so I ran the next week worth of runs, and my legs were just dead every day. I just feel like I wasn't recovering. And then I got to the weekend, and I had a couple of long runs. It was kind of a little bit of a shorter. There were some speed runs in there, and it's like, I think, a 16-mile and an 18-mile run. And the 16-mile run was horrible. I just barely made it through. And then I did this 18-mile run, and I was able to do that. It was a little bit better, but I just felt beat down. Like, these should have been easy runs at this point. I thought maybe it's the training, maybe just a little bit from the sickness. And then the next week, that's when everything fell apart. The easy runs, my legs were dead. They just kept on getting worse. And then I got to Friday, and I was supposed to run 15 miles, and I could hardly make it. I made it 14. I could hardly walk after 10 miles. My back was messed up. I was not recovering. Everything was just going to crap. And I realized that's the point where I realized it's over. There's no way that I'm going to be able to do this, because the very next day I was supposed to run a 30-mile run and then a 20-mile run. So, there was nothing I could do. I literally, after I finished that run that day, I couldn't even walk. I don't know why my back ended up being messed up. Like, it was like overuse injuries, and I just had all this accumulated fatigue and injuries after training, again, 235 pounds for over a year, training these high mileages, plus the last 4 or 5 years I had been almost nonstop marathon training. It was just at the breaking point where I couldn't do it. I physically could not run the next day. I could hardly walk the next day. And so there was no way this was going to happen. So I decided that, at this point, that I'd have to call it, because the only way that I'd be able to actually do this was I'd have to take another week or 2 off, lose a bunch of fitness, and then probably train for another 8 weeks again. And at this point, having done that twice, having sacrificed so much in my life, I would love to do it. I would love to go on and do it. But there comes a point where, I think I realized on this journey as I was kind of making this decision, because it was a really hard decision, right? At this point, everyone in my life wanted me to stop doing this. They wanted me to stop doing this way before this. But finally, I realized that I had gotten what I wanted out of this, right? Because again, I tell you guys all the time that it's not about what you get, but it's about who you become. That's what's really important in life and in setting your goals. And the reason why I set out to run 100 miles was about who I would become in that process. And what I realized was that I had completed every bit of training that I was supposed to complete. I had done everything that I was supposed to do. I had run through injuries. I had, tumbled down mountains and thought I broke my leg in the darkness, in the cold, all by myself in some of the training runs in Flagstaff. I had woke up at 4 a.m. to go and run 50 miles and had made it and had gone through all of that and forced myself to do it regardless if I felt like it or not. When I felt like I could hardly walk, I ran 10 more miles, and so that was the purpose. The whole purpose of it was not the 100-mile race. It was not some belt buckle. It would be nice to do that. It would be nice. And I wanted to do it. But the whole purpose was about who I would become in that process, in that journey. And I can honestly say I've become a lot stronger in this year, in doing all this training, in pushing myself way beyond the limits that I ever thought was possible. When the first time when I ran that 50-mile race, right, and I've got a video of it on the channel, I remember at mile 30 just being ready to collapse, thinking there's no way I can run 20 more miles, and then pushing myself to the point where I got to mile 40, and then at 40 thinking to myself, there's no way I could possibly give up when there's only 10 more miles, and just somehow making it through that. And so there was a lot that I learned about myself, a lot that I shaped about myself in this process, in this journey. And that's why, again, why a lot of you guys, if you're a Bulldog Mindset member, if you're not, go check it out. There's a link down below for $7. You can join the membership for the first month. In fact, I got to tell you guys, it is going up because we have over 900 members now. So I believe probably before we get to 1,000, I'm going to raise the price just because I want to keep the quality in there. And anyway, what I was going to say about the membership is that, if you guys are members, join the Strava group, go and run. So many guys in the membership have run marathons, have trained for half marathons, have done all these things, because that process, again, I'm not a distance runner, right? That's part of the reason why I do it for you guys, is so that you can see that you can do it. But the reason why I did it, or why I do it, is because of the growth. And a lot of guys that have done this and have gone and went through the pain, and believe me, if you're going to train for a marathon, you're going to be in a lot of pain. You're going to do a lot of stuff that you do not want to do, okay? But it's going to cause you to grow. It's going to be an extreme amount of discomfort. It's going to cause you to figure out and learn things about yourself that you never knew, right? I'll tell you, when you're on a 20-mile run and you're just by yourself for 20 miles out there in the sun for 4 to 5 hours, okay, you learn about yourself, okay? You're spending a lot of time, on your own, and in dealing with demons that you've never had to deal with before. So I definitely would encourage you, if you are a member, or if you're not a member, go join and sign up. I've got a ton of stuff in there about running and starting running, and we have so many members that have started running. And join the Strava group. I've got a Strava group in there, and and connect with other guys that are doing this, so you can go through this process. I feel like had I not gone and become a distance runner, had I not this year become an ultra runner, that I would have missed out on a lot of things in life, and really understanding, because there are so many points where I thought I was beyond the point that I could go on, but I realized I had more, right? As David Goggins says in his book, that he talks about the 40% rule. He's got, if you haven't read this book, by the way, good book called It Can't Hurt Me. He's the guy that, that puts me to shame in terms of all this stuff. Just the other day, I was watching that he had run the JFK 50 miler. I think he came in second place. And then 4 days later, he ran a 200-mile race just to accompany a friend who wanted to run that 200-mile race. So just insane, right? His level of work ethic and the ability that he's had to make himself mentally strong. So yeah, so I don't know. I don't know about this video. I don't know if you guys are still listening. I mean, sure, some of you guys are, but I didn't create the video for you. I created it more for me. I was trying to create it originally for you, but I can't. I have to create it for me, and just to tell my story. It might be boring at some parts along the way, but it's what happened. This was a year that I became an ultra runner, something I never, ever, ever imagined that I would do. And it didn't end the way that I wanted it to. Like I said, I wanted to have that GoPro footage, and it's sad, right? It is something that I feel like a part of me has been ripped away from me, because this was my goal, was my focus for such a long time. I put in so much blood and sweat and tears, literally doing this, literally pushing for this goal. And so many weekends, waking up, early every single day, 5 a.m. wake ups, just to go out and run, just to make sure, running 6 days a week for this whole time, never really missing a workout. And but yeah, I mean, that's what it takes, right? And so it's kind of taught me, where my limits are, that they're way beyond whatever thought possible. And that's why I encourage you guys, right? If you have a chance, if you haven't ever, everyone should run a marathon in their life, I think, because you will learn a lot about yourself, and it will carry over to other things. But to get to the final part here of what am I going to do. I know a lot of you are disappointed, and you're like, well, it's split. Most of you get it. Some of you are like, well, John, you should just go after it again. I know you're going to do it again. I know you're going to run for that 100 miles. And I would say, I would discourage you from saying things like that. And the reason why I say that is because you don't know. You don't know yet. You don't know what the sacrifice is. It's easy for you to say, John, you make another sacrifice in your life so that I can cheer you on. But it's different from that perspective, right? Like I said, it's easier for you to do it from there, not knowing what the cost is. And the cost is high. It is costing me a lot. It's costing me a lot of money, of relationships, of time, of pain, of business that I could have been spending that time and that effort on. So it's come at a high cost. So yeah, so I'm not going to do this. I'm not, this is not a bluff. I'm not going to go out and run 100 miles. I'm not saying that I might not ever do it in the future, but I know how much it takes of your life, and it takes almost all of it. Okay. So I'm not going to run I'm not going to do an Ironman. All right. I'm not going to do any of those things. For now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on business. I'm going to take some time to heal, to recuperate from all this. I completely fried my nervous system, my hormones, my body was not meant to do this. And I'm going to get back into a good place, a good system, getting productive again. And then we'll see. And then we'll see what my next thing will be as far as physical. I'm just going to go to the gym. I'm just going to lift, try to get in really good shape, work on my physique, those type of things, and not, and enjoy having the freedom and some time to be able to focus on other things. As much as running has become so much of a part of my life for the last 5 years, really. I mean, and I've been running for the last 10 years, but more seriously with half marathons and marathons for the last 5 years, I'm excited to let it go. I'm excited to move on and let this thing die, because I want to do some other things. And one thing you have to realize in life is that you can only choose so many things. There's only so much that you can do. There's only so much you can do with your time. So anyway, guys, thanks for bearing with me on this video. Give it a like, a thumbs up if you enjoyed this. And I'm curious, what are your thoughts about this? What are your comments? I'm curious to hear it, you guys. And also, I just want to thank all you guys that have supported me. So many of you guys on my Instagram, have cheered me on, have supported me on the hard days. And there's been so many of them, and on this channel. And, I appreciate you guys. I appreciate especially you guys in the Bulldog Mindset membership. A lot of times when I thought about giving up, I don't want to post to the membership and say that I gave up. And so, you guys have encouraged me and given me something to strive for, just to show I'm going to do this so that you can do this as well. And that's been something that's helped me to get through this. And so, yeah, so my plan right now is to relax a little bit as much as I can, knowing that I don't know how to relax, but my relaxation will be working more on Bulldog Mindset and bringing you guys more stuff and taking things to the next level, because I've been really wanting to do that. I've been really wanting to have the time, and just with the running, it's not possible. So thank you guys. I appreciate the support. And I don't know. We'll see. Maybe someday I'll run again. Maybe I should run 400s. All right.